So the governors of Virginia and Georgia, where Dulles Airport is, and of course Atlanta Hartsfield, which also receive people directly from the affected areas, they're probably going to be waking up this morning feeling the pressure to do the same things that the governors of New York, New Jersey, and Illinois. What's your advice to them?
Go with the science. That's what we're trying to do here in our government. Go with the science.
And the science says?
The science tells us that people who are not sick, if you do not come into contact with body fluid, if someone comes back from wherever, Liberia, and they're well, they are no danger to anyone. That is for sure.
Dr. Spencer was well for a week.
Right. He was well for a week, but we're not saying just leave them off. You monitor them. You could monitor them in multiple different ways. You don't have to put them in a confined place. You monitor them, you take their temperature, you take this, and remember, Dr. Spencer was not sick at the time that he was going around. And we keep saying it over and over again, Chuck. You have to come into direct contact with body fluids. So the risk to the general public is vanishingly small.
Apparently, though, according to Governor Cuomo, the federal government is considering something more stringent. What are you guys considering?
Well, that's certain types of monitoring. You have to stratify risk, Chuck. You know, there's people who are at high risk, there are people at some risk, and there are people at low but not zero risk, and there are people that are at no risk. I'm talking about the healthcare workers.
These are all healthcare workers.
All healthcare workers. And you fashion what you do with them according to the risk. And one of the ways you can mitigate against this issue is by monitoring different types of monitoring. You don't necessarily have to.
But how do you make sure it's mandatory? That right now it's voluntary, and thank goodness Dr. Spencer was doing it.
Right. Well, there are ways to ratchet that up. I mean, there's passive monitoring. You take your temperature, and if anything goes wrong, you report it. There's active, where you report it to someone, and then there's direct active, where someone comes in and actually takes your temperature. That's all short of quarantine.
Okay. Dr. Anthony Fauci, thanks for coming back.
Good to be with you, Chuck.
Thank you, sir.